I never wanted to be a failure at marriage and worked very hard over the course of 17 years to build a relationship. But he had issues with anxiety, abandonment, and anger that as he got older became more intense and more disruptive to our life together. I had friends over, and he was outside with us on the deck and off to the side, and he just had this very strange look in his eyes that my friends who've known me for many years and who also knew Mike felt was very scary. And on that day, I felt that he was getting angrier. That was the day I decided that I'm going to file. I went to work that morning. Everything was normal. I had a 9-hour day and a busy ER, nothing unusual at all. When I got home, I went into the house. I saw the bedroom. It looked dark, and I presumed that I must have forgotten to open the blinds, but did not think anything was amiss, my house having been alarmed. I moved forward, and from behind the partially closed bedroom door, out stepped a man who had yellow dishwashing gloves on and a hammer in his hand. I said, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Get out of here." He swung the hammer, hitting me in the side of my head, and swung again, hitting me in my temple. I was so full of fear and rage and adrenaline myself that my only thing that I could feel was terror and the knowledge that I needed to do everything I could do to live through this. I began to struggle with him for the hammer, and he had a very tight grip. And as I struggled with him, I began to sense that he was not there for a burglary. He never asked me, "Where's your safe? Do you have any guns? Are there any money in the house? Do you have drugs here?" None of the things that I would think that a burglar or a home invasion robber would say. And as I struggled for the hammer, he said, "You're strong." And I saw in his eyes something that made me believe that he had done this before. He sounded surprised, but he also sounded excited. I knew he was here to kill me. I grabbed him by the throat and said to him, as we were literally nose to nose, "You're not going to kill me in my home." He began to turn blue, and I felt that he was going to pass out at that point. I grabbed the hammer and I began hitting him. My father was a carpenter, and in the 60s you didn't have home alarms, and he told us that we could feel free to use a hammer and that we should use the claw end because it would work the best. When I had control of the hammer, I used the claw end because it did work the best. I hit him, and I hit him. I thought probably I hit him 3 or 4 times, and then I lost the hammer, and I ran. I got just a few feet outside the bedroom door, and he grabbed me from behind, spun me, and began punching me in the face. He broke open my lip. I had another bleeding area of my lip as well. I felt dizzy. We were both bleeding. I grabbed him by the leg and I pulled him down And I continued to try to get the hammer out of his gloved hand, but I couldn't, and I was tired. I was screaming for my neighbor Joe in the hopes that he would hear me, but my voice was getting less and less, and my strength was going. I started to bite him. First on his forearm, I bit him twice, and then on his upper arm. I bit him on the edge of his back and along on his right flank. I bit him on his thigh, and he did not let go of the hammer. I even, because we were now side by side facing each other, bit him in his genitalia with the hopes that he would let go of the hammer, or in the hopes that if I died, that I would leave marks on him that would help them determine that he was the one who had done this. When I realized I was not going to ever regain the hammer, it came to me that I needed to become the weapon. And I put my left leg over his right leg, which pushed him face down into the hardwood floors. I was on his backside, and I leaned forward until I could put my left arm under his neck, and I began to squeeze. I told him, "Tell me who sent you here, and I will call you an ambulance." I let him go so that he could have air and be able to speak, but he didn't. Instead, he began to do his best to flip me up off of his back, and I knew that if he were able to do so, I would be dead. When he began to turn pink again and regain his ability to flip me over, I knew that I needed to lean forward until he was still. My heart rate was so incredibly high that I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. I grabbed the hammer, and then I struggled up and I ran. I ran through the hall, through the living room, and out, and then to my neighbors, where I hammered on the door and said to Dennis when he came to the door, "Let me in. I've been attacked. I think I may have killed a man." And shortly after, an officer came over. I asked him, "Is he dead?" And he said yes. I immediately began to think about his family. Everybody has somebody who loves them. Children, a wife, a mother, a dad. The worst of this is not that someone tried to kill me, but that I had to kill someone else to survive. But I have no shame, because I did not choose his death for him. I chose my life. I chose life. When I returned to my home the next day, I was anxious to hear messages. There was a message from my husband on both lines, but the man who would sound totally agitated over very minor things did not sound like a husband who was hearing that his wife had nearly been murdered the night before. And I knew when I heard his voice on those two messages that he did this. He was behind this. I survived because I had training in how to avoid injury in violent situations. And when you combine that with the fear of knowing that someone is trying to kill you and the power of adrenaline that is your gift in those instances, I had all the tools that I needed to survive.